There is a version of you standing in a room right now, and someone in that room is deciding exactly how far they can push you before you finally snap. They already know the answer. They've tested it 100 times, and every single time, you've let them get away with it. Tonight, that ends, because what I'm about to tell you will either wake something up inside you that's been asleep for years, or it will terrify you enough to keep sleeping. Your choice. But if you stay until the end of this video, you will never see yourself or the people around you the same way again. I had a friend who gave everything he had to everyone around him. He forgave people who never apologized. He stayed loyal to people who never once had his back. He sacrificed his own peace over and over for people who wouldn't have remembered his name if he vanished tomorrow. Then he disappeared for 3 years. When he came back, something in him had changed. The softness was gone. The desperation to be liked was gone. In its place was something calm, something unreadable, something almost dangerous. I asked him what happened. He looked at me and said, "The world didn't change. I did. I stopped being easy to break." I haven't forgotten that sentence since, because underneath it was a truth I wasn't ready to hear. It wasn't just his story. It's yours too. Right now, there are 2 versions of you living inside the same body. One of them explains too much, apologizes too fast, tolerates too long, and keeps waiting for people to become who you need them to be. That version bends over backwards trying to be understood, respected, chosen. But the harder that version works for approval, the less anyone seems to value it. Then there's the other version, the quiet one, the certain one, the one who doesn't argue, doesn't plead, doesn't chase anyone out the door. That version simply removes itself, without noise, without guilt, without a second thought. You have been living as the first version for
far too long, and it has been quietly destroying you. It has made you soft in places where you needed to be sharp, emotional in moments that demanded strategy. Niccolò Machiavelli wrote that it is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. He wasn't glorifying cruelty. He was describing control, and the discipline required to stop being the person who bends for everyone else's comfort. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly how to wake up that second version of yourself. Not a cruel version, a composed one. A version people can sense, but never quite manipulate. There are 8 shifts that separate who you are right now from who you're capable of becoming. Every one of them is going to cost you a piece of the person you used to be. Some of it will feel like grief, but if you commit to it, you will come out the other side unrecognizable. Not because you became someone cold, but because you stopped needing the world's permission to feel whole. Before we go further, type this in the comments. I will not break again. Now, let's begin. The first shift is learning to stop pouring yourself into people who were never going to appreciate it. Your greatest weakness was never that you had a big heart. Your weakness was where you kept pleasure into people who take your warmth and give nothing back, hoping that if you just forgave enough, explained enough, gave enough, they would finally recognize what you're worth. They never do. There's a reason for that. Anything handed out too freely gets quietly devalued in the mind of the person receiving it. People associate easy generosity with desperation, and the second they sense that you need to be liked, they find a way to use it against you. That's not an accident. That's how power imbalances get built, one act of unconditional forgiveness at a time. Machiavelli observed that people are quicker to turn on someone they love than someone they fear, because love
comes with no real consequence attached. The people who take advantage of your goodness do it precisely because they know you won't leave. They know you'll rationalize their behavior. They know you'll find an excuse for them one more time. That isn't compassion. That's self-abandonment wearing compassion's face. Here's the uncomfortable truth. People remember the moments you held your ground far more than the moments you gave in. They respect boundaries, not explanations. The more predictable your patience becomes, the more invisible you become along with it. Every time you swallow disrespect to keep the peace, you taught the other person that you are replaceable. Every time you justified your worth out loud, you confirmed, even to yourself, that you thought it needed proving. That's the real reason good people get hurt first. Not because kindness is a flaw, but because kindness without limits gets mistaken for surrender. So it's time to stop believing that loyalty is owed simply because you once cared. Caring is a privilege you extend to people who've earned it through consistent respect, not a debt you owe to everyone who's ever needed something from you. Let your absence do the talking for everyone else. Detachment isn't punishment. It's just the truth, finally allowed to exist without an apology attached. The second shift is learning to turn pain into fuel instead of evidence against yourself. Pain doesn't lie to you, and it doesn't care about your excuses. It simply exposes what's still fragile underneath the surface. The difference between people who get crushed by hard times and people who get sharpened by them isn't how much they suffered. It's what they chose to do with it afterward. Weak responses to pain keep searching for fairness, as if the world owes anyone a clean resolution. Strategic minds understand something different. Pain is currency. You either invest it in becoming stronger, or you spend it complaining until it's worthless. The people who come back from real devastation aren't lucky. They're deliberate. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" they ask, "What is this teaching me about where I need to grow?" Every betrayal reveals who you trusted too quickly. Every rejection reveals where your self-worth was hiding in the wrong place. Once you start seeing pain this way, it stops being a wound you carry and becomes a tool you sharpen yourself with. The third shift is releasing your need to be understood. The craving to have people finally get your intentions is one of the most effective traps keeping strong people stuck in place. You keep over-explaining, hoping someone will see your heart the way you see it. But most people aren't listening to understand you. They're listening to file you into a category. And the more you explain, the more material you hand them to use against you later. When people know exactly what makes you tick, they know exactly how to move you. That's why composed people say less than they know and let their actions speak for the rest. Silence isn't avoidance, it's restraint. It keeps your intentions your own business, and it keeps the people around you slightly unsure of what you'll do next, which, whether you like it or not, is its own kind of respect. You don't owe anyone a play-by-play of why you've changed, why you've gone quiet, or why your standards are higher now. Let them assume whatever they want. Every wrong guess they make about you is a layer of armor you didn't have to build yourself. The fourth shift is learning to detach instead of beg. Chasing anyone, attention, closure, affection, only shrinks you in the eyes of people who were never planning to value you in the first place. Detachment isn't coldness. It's the discipline of walking away from anything that costs you your self-respect, no matter how badly you wanted it to work. Attachment and loyalty are not the same thing, even though they get confused constantly. Loyalty is a choice made
with clear eyes. Attachment is dependence dressed up as devotion. The moment your emotions are steering the ship, you become easy to steer for anyone paying attention. Detached people don't argue when someone pulls away. They simply observe. They don't plead when they're disrespected. They leave quietly. That stillness becomes its own kind of statement, louder than any argument could ever be. The fifth shift is building boundaries and treating them like armor, not apology. Boundaries are the invisible line that separates a life you control from one anyone can walk into and take from. You've probably been taught that saying no is selfish, that limits make you difficult. In reality, living without boundaries is a slow betrayal of yourself. Every time you tolerate something you shouldn't, every time you forgive without any real consequence, you hand away another piece of your own dignity. People will always test the limits you refuse to enforce. That's simply human nature, not malice. Boundaries aren't there to shut people out. They exist to protect what's sacred on the inside. And the moment you stop rewarding bad behavior with your continued presence, you take back control of every relationship in your life. The sixth shift is mastering silence as a form of strength rather than avoidance. Most people fill silence because it makes them uncomfortable. It exposes how little control they actually have. But every unnecessary word you speak is one more piece of ammunition someone else can use later. In a world addicted to noise, restraint becomes its own kind of dominance. When you say less, you force other people to reveal more about themselves while trying to figure you out. The quietest person in the room often holds far more power than the loudest one, not because they're hiding something sinister, but because they've stopped needing an audience to validate their next move. The seventh shift is understanding that loyalty has to be earned continuously, not given away blindly. When you hand out unconditional loyalty to everyone, it stops being meaningful and starts being expected, and expectations get exploited. Loyalty given without discernment isn't virtue, it's vulnerability.
That doesn't mean living without trust. It means trusting people based on their consistent actions, not their potential or their promises. The people who deserve your full loyalty will prove it through how they treat you when it costs them something. Everyone else gets your caution, and that's not cruelty. That's simply self-preservation. The eighth and final shift is becoming someone who is no longer easy to unsettle. This is the point where insults, betrayal, and manipulation stop having the power to pierce you, not because you've gotten numb, but because you've stopped outsourcing your peace to people who never protected it in the first place. The world will keep testing your patience. It will keep proving that fairness isn't guaranteed. But once your sense of self stops depending on other people's approval, none of that chaos can reach the center of who you are anymore. You stop reacting to every provocation and start responding on your own terms, in your own time. None of this happens overnight, and none of it is about becoming someone hard or unfeeling. It's about becoming someone who finally protects their own peace as fiercely as they've always protected everyone else's. You've spent years giving your energy away to people who never earned it, chasing understanding from people who were never going to offer it freely, and calling your own exhaustion loyalty. That chapter is closing. What you're building now is a version of yourself that isn't available for exploitation anymore. Not because you stopped caring, but because you finally started caring about yourself first. Every trial ahead becomes practice. Every betrayal becomes information. Every moment of discomfort becomes proof that you're no longer the person who bends just to keep the room comfortable. If this gave you something to think about, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a like and subscribe for more. You are no longer the version of yourself that breaks. You are the version that holds the line. Type it in the comments. I am not easy to